Hello. I don't know why this is making me a little bit teary-eyed. It says, um, I'll just read this. My problem was that, with a few exceptions, notably Don DeLillo, I didn't particularly like the writers in my modern canon. I checked out their books, including the Recognitions, read a few pages and returned them. I liked the idea of socially engaged fiction. I was at work on my own systems novel of conspiracy and apocalypse, and I craved academic and hipster respect of the kind that Pynchon and Gaddis got, and Saul Bellow and Anne Beatty didn't. But Bellow and Beatty, not to mention Dickens and Conrad and Brandt and Dostoevsky and Christina Stead, were the writers I actually unhiply enjoyed reading. If Coover's The Public Burning and Pynchon's The Crying of Lot 49 moved me, it was mainly because I loved Coover's character Richard Nixon and Pynchon's Oedipus Maas. The following sentences, are what made me a little bit teary for some reason, I don't know. But postmodern fiction weren't supposed to be about sympathetic characters. Characters, properly speaking, weren't even supposed to exist. Characters were feeble, suspect constructs, like the author himself, like the human soul. Nevertheless, to my shame, I seemed to need them. Why does he say to my shame? I've read that Pynchon hasn't given a lot of he hasn't given a lot of, well, not a lot. It's You can count how many interviews Pynchon has given to the public or magazines. Apparently, I read a very few number. He gave very few interviews, and he's almost 90. I think he's 87, from the last time I checked his age, and there, I don't know. I don't know, but from my knowledge, I connected that with this. Maybe he doesn't want. Maybe he doesn't want to be remembered. He doesn't want his personal side. He doesn't want the Thomas. He doesn't want the. Excuse me, not. He doesn't want the Pynchon in as an author versus a private life to coincide together. But I like what Franzen said just now about. I'm really not trying to give up what I'm trying to say. I want to finish my thoughts, because I'm getting a little bit discouraged the more I speak about it, but I want to try to finish it. So when he says characters are feeble, like the author himself, like the human soul, maybe he knows himself that he is also that. He recognizes that he is himself. Pynchon himself is a feeble. The human soul itself is feeble, and he just doesn't see the point. Maybe he doesn't see the point in talking about his book, talking about himself, because there is no point. I mean, interviews are very different, right? That's the thing. As in, what I suspect in how a lot of interviews go is that they give a bunch of it's there's always going to be what motivates you, or what makes you a great writer, or like what do you like to read, like what books helped you to write, what you know and they're not necessarily bad, right? Because we want to understand what this individual likes, and we want to understand what what his interests are, and his recommendations. Like we want that, but wow, actually, I've yeah, wow, I don't know. That's so. In all, to conclude that sentence where it says what Franson said about characters, properly speaking, weren't even supposed to exist. Characters were feeble social suspect constructs, like the author himself, like the human soul. I just wanted to talk about that with how Pynchon rarely gave any interviews. After I had wasted a year on the screenplay, and I tried to rekindle my collegiate, collegiate. He says, in the event, nothing was as I had expected. Not many people in the 90s were asking if I had read The Salt Wheat Factor. The recognitions, on the other hand, whether of its virtues or because of the circumstances of my reading it, bowled me over. Its characters weren't sympathetic, but the wit and passion and seriousness of its creator were. I titled my third novel partly in homage to it. The corrections is what I'm carefully assuming he's talking about. A few years after I conquered the recognitions, I started Gaddis' second novel, J.R. I again bought the handsome penguin paperback, and I devoted an hour or two each evening to reading it. The novel, a massive comedy of modern American banality and social entropy, was just as brilliant as the recognition. Banality. Unfortunately, I no longer had the luxury or burden of entire days pre-reading. One night I gave up in the middle of a four-page paragraph. Four-page paragraph, Jesus. And for the next few nights, I was out late, and when I opened JR again, I was lost. I set it aside, hoping to pick up the threads some other night. 2 2 months later, I quietly reshelved it. The bookmark, a sassy Ticketmaster sleeve bearing an ad for K-Rock 92.3 FM. Howard Stern all morning, classic rock and roll all day. Remain stuck on page 469. Attesting to my defeat by J.R. Or to J.R.'s defeat by my noisy life. Instead of Stern's, I had simply failed as a reader. I did have contract on my side. I'd given the book weeks of evening reading. It still wasn't working for me. And now I was eager to read shorter, warmer books by James Birdie, Alison Munro, Penelope Fitzgerald, Haldor Laxness. Battling through JR, I'd wanted to grab Gaddis by the labels and shout, "Hello, I'm the reader you want. I love smart fiction, and I'm looking for a good systems novel. If you can't even show me a good time, who else do you think is going to read you?" Okay, this 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 he Franzen summarizes it incredibly well. What I was trying to speak of about Pynchon and his very few interviews. Um, so here we go. White retreats from her into coldness and abstraction, and Gaddis retreats from readers in much the same way, as if for him, intercourse with the public were a pleasure that threatened to taint the purity of his motives. What mattered to Gaddis, who avowedly strove to write literature that would last, was not the weak and fleshy artist, but the afterlife. Although he had a family, many friends, and a busy social life in which he enjoyed literary gossip, he consistently denied his person to the public. Strict prohibitions like this are a way in which threatened religious minorities resist the seductions of the majority culture, and Gaddis in the 50s and Norman Mailer and Truman Capote as examples of writers who had been seduced. He chose instead to be a purist of his faith. In his 50-year career, he gave exactly one substantial interview to the Paris Review. He published one brief autobiographical essay. He gave no public readings. Wow, 50 years career. One substantial interview. I have to read that. But I didn't read any of his books yet. So maybe I'll return after a few years. I don't know. Not that in excess of media attention was ever a problem. The Recognitions was published by Harcourt Brace in 1955. Wow, that's 70 years ago, huh? Yeah, it's 70 years ago. That's crazy. 70 years. That's a whole life right there. With the marketing strategy of everyone is talking about this controversial book, it received 55 reviews, an impressive number by today's standards, and as William Goss notes in his introduction to the Penguin edition, only 53 of these notices were stupid. The New Yorker gave the book a brief, smirking dismissal. Words. Yeah, it wasn't. I heard it wasn't. Except it wasn't. Well, no. Was it in this interview? No. No. Wait a minute. He didn't say this. Yeah. No. So I remember purchasing the book last year. What was it? Because I was reading a bunch of stuff about David Foster Wallace, and Gaddis was one of the recommendations, along with Pynchon and a whole lot of others, like Don DeLillo, like what Franzen explained here, with his list of the postmodernism authors, and the Recognitions was one of the most recommended ones for a complete for a beginner like me. So I actually started reading it when I was making food for lunch. I read the introduction about the biography, about a very brief introduction about the book, about the author. Yeah, and I heard it wasn't accepted very well in the beginning, but then later his books won. I'm not sure what awards, but it was a yearly award. I wasn't sure what it was. Yeah. Everyone is talking about this controversial book. There was 25 reviews. Only 53 of these notices were stupid. New Yorker gave book a brief smirking dismissal. Words. Tom Powell in the Post offered up an error-riddled sneer. Sales were about 5,000 in hardcover. Bad for a challenging first novel by an unknown writer. But the only prize the book won was for its design, and it quickly disappeared from public sight. almost think. I almost think that if I'd gotten the Nobel Prize when The Recognitions was published, I wouldn't have been terribly surprised. Gaddis told the Paris Review in 1986, adding that the book's reception had been sobering and humbling. Maybe if the novel had met with greater acclaim, Gaddis would have relaxed a little. Maybe White's "What is it they want to raid?" like his other Puritanisms, would have been revealed as a skinny young man attitude to be outgrown. I doubt it, though. The book is about the everyday world's indifference to the superior reality of art. Its last lines, with high regard, though seldom played, unmistakably prefigure its own reception, nurturing the hope that your marginal novel will be celebrated by the mainstream. The Cassandra-like wish that people will thank you for telling them unwelcome truths is a ritual way of ensuring disappointment, of reaffirming your own world-denying status, of mortifying the flesh, of remaining at heart an angry young man. In the 4 decades following the publication of The Recognitions, Gaddis's work grew angrier and angrier. It's a signature paradox of literary postmodernism, the writer whose least angry work was written first. Interesting. Interesting. I mean, I'm assuming Franzen did finish reading J.R. and the following books. All right, tomorrow's Saturday. So again, this is Rage. Appears to have built in 1922. He grew up with his mother in an old house in Massapequa, Long Island, and at a small Connecticut boarding school that he attended from the ages 5 to 13. 5 is young for a boarding school, and 5 strikes me as a vital figure in Gaddis's biography. In J.R., an alter ego of Gaddis, an angry drinker named Jack Gibbs, who was likewise sent to boarding school at the age of 5, speaks of having been in the way since the day I could walk. And he describes the loneliness of boarding school. Holy crap! All right, this is pretty long. I'm burned out right now. The closest. Let me read the introduction for this book. Oh wow, it's actually signed. It's a signed copy. It's it's not for me, obviously, because I got it in at a library book sale. But I have his signature. I'm gonna cover the foreword. Yeah. Alright, I cover this thing. See? Isn't that cool? Some part. Oh shit. I never really understood the appeal of signature copies, right? Or um I never understood that, but then I understood it. Yeah, I never understood it until I understood it. Holding something that has been touched by that person. It's an interesting mythical feeling. I think that's what it is. All right. Okay, what's going on here? I don't know if it's my eyesight, but it's like some parts of it is single spaced, some parts of it look double spaced. It's a little weird. The madness. The sun low in the sky, minor light, cooling star, gust after gust of disorder. Gust of disorder. Trees houses, temperatures falling. Northern region of things going to end. No children in the yards here.